Quiz. A person who is always on time, always prepared, always the same, is what?
A revolutionist!
No. The lives of ordinary people require a certain kind of energy conversion that has, as you might suspect, at least I'm going to say, has never been noted before. And this kind of energy conversion would be known, if it had been known, under the name, I suggest to you, of validation. It is a kind of confirmation, it's a kind of approval. It is, in a sense, giving force, giving cogency to what seems to be a person's life. The need for this validation helps do several things that I'm going to mention right now. One is it helps keep men in herds, humanity. It helps keep people moving. And above all, it keeps everyone always talking. There is an inner, extremely complex nexus in life that keeps everything within it interacting, communicating, and converting. And very specifically, it is a kind of internal reassurance that all is well. And I guess that was a lot for the heading of the first paragraph, but that's it. None of this is new. None of this is new to those of you who've been listening. And in a sense, none of this is new in life. But they don't know how to put it all together. They don't know what to make of it, and they're not supposed to. So back to the beginning of the heading of this, if I can retrace all my steps. And if I can't, we'll cut the tape and... The lives of ordinary people require a certain kind of energy conversion that I would put under the name validation. This is one general way to look at almost all of human conversation, which of course is a form of energy conversion. It is a form of validation. What else is going on? Now you new people riding by in pickup trucks and horseback for the first time, don't take this as being some kind of psychological commentary, because it's not. Although psychology today could somewhere make some comments that might sound not dissimilar to some of this, but we're talking about something that is down to the level, the basic level of chemistry and physics, the flows of electrons, the conversions of energy, the imperfect conversions of energy, the flawed, incomplete movements of information. Validation is one view, is one hole through which to look through the fabric and to classify, to see the purpose of almost all human conversation. What is even conversation with yourself? To run you back, what's 3 days, 96 hours ago, last time we met. And there seems to be a kind of internal attempt to assure oneself that all is well. It should be easy enough, before I go back internally, it should be easy enough for you to see between people that people, to put it very crudely, but remember this is far beyond what would appear to be ordinary psychological pertinence of this. That people are continually asking others to weigh them, to keep a chart on them. And of course, people do not care that much about each other. It's not the way things are wired up. People say they do, and people do not actually keep charts on one another. But if you ask someone to, they will, very often. But all of this is on the basis of a kind of confirmation, a kind of validation, a continual assurance within the life of life's own body that all goes well. But when it seems to be down on the individual level, you are apparently having to ask continually, how am I doing? And you don't have to be running for mayor of New York City. But you're asking, did I do all right? Am I all right? What do you think about this plan I've got? It serves a very specific purpose, like all purposes, far beyond some apparent or some imagined feeding of the individual ego. But it's not simply as it would be thought of in the city probably nowadays, as some form of interpersonal support that friends, lovers, family, that it's part of their responsibility to tell others, especially when they seem shy, hesitant, at loose ends, at 6s and 7s, whatever the hell that means, that another person say, there, it's all right. And the other person, you and all other persons, are continually seeking some kind of validation. It is chemical. It is electrical. It is not psychological. Verbs, nouns, sentences, the kind of whinograms are blankograms that are transported verbally are seeking a kind of validation, but not just verbally, not just as it appears to city eyes and the sound to city ears that you are saying, am I all right? And the other person says, yes, that does take place. But it is an energy conversion going on. It is life itself continually checking, in our case through man, that all goes well. But people have always taken it personally. They got no choice, ordinary people, because they suffer from it's a certain malady that I don't go into. But they take all of this personally. That my life in some way is so important. This is the tacit part. And don't everybody, those of you on horseback, do not try and listen out, or don't listen to yourself with some sort of cynical laughter that this may elicit in you, because if it does, it's not my fault. There's nothing cynical about it. There's nothing sarcastic about it, because it's not even what you take it to be. But it is as though people are having to continually say, did I do okay? Did I do all right? Am I going to be okay? And it seems as though it has to do with them personally, that my life is so important, which the city people, their lives are important. What the hell? Give them that. But their life is very important, that did I do all right? Now some of you really yacked it up when I was talking about that a real revolutionist should not be counting chickens, keeping score, maintaining charts. And it got most of the laugh from you people to point out that somebody trying to lose weight, for a real hard-wired example, got no business if they knew what they're doing with a scale. That is as funny, if you really had a good non-hostile sense of humor, that's as funny. Let me think of one of my favorites still for this year is serious articles being written about graphologists analyzing the handwriting of deceased people and pointing out what their handwriting shows about them, picking out great historical figures. You know, all that's a little funny, but it gets funnier and funnier that in some supposed reputable news media, they repeat it like, well, here's some proof. Some people think this, doesn't amount to much, but here this person analyzes the handwriting of JFK and points out many things about the person and his potential had he not died. And sure as hell, it fits in with what's historically known, which, you know. That is a form of real good validation. But at any rate, some of you people really laughed it up that you thought you recognized for a second that is kind of silly that somebody has got to send off to a scale and say, am I losing weight? And the scale goes yes or no. But it is the whole scenario. It is the whole energy conversion that is necessary in the city to create lags, gaps between what a person says and what they do, between what they plan and what they accomplish, and many other even more subtle variations of those. Validation is connected to this because it is a form, it is an aspect of the dynamics of energy being converted. People are continually, even though I told you not to, people are continually checking their own pulse, their own blood pressure, trying to look in their own eyes. How am I doing? Is all well? The most blatant is, as I was suggesting, the easiest for you to see, is in human conversation. Just listen to people talk. Listen to you talk if you were left to your own city devices. People apparently at times are asking for information. If you stopped and asked them the purpose of what you just said, they could say, I'm soliciting diverse opinions. I would like to have someone else's input, and they can go on and on and on and on. But if you listen, it's everybody is asking for validation. Everybody's doing their own half-ass imitation of Ed Koch. How am I doing? And people are dancing with this verbally. That's the surface of it, but there is something more real. This is not something wrong in the city, of course. It's not something to be cured, and it's not something for me that I'm here now to herald the call and wake everybody up from this unprofitable activity, because it is not. But you need to see that there is built into the human organism, for reasons I'm going to try to go into a little more in a second, the need that first on the individual level, it seems as though if you had never got involved with this, if you were just back being your good old self, back with your old government, you are continually asking for validation. People do it when they try to describe what are you seeking if you're going to be in the dating game. What do you seek in a lover? They may not, of course, use the word, but nowadays, once they get past, most men seem want nowadays to mention, well, I'd like thighs about the size of a ham hock. Men nowadays are prone to say things, I would like a real caring person. But then what they get into, even now, and 3,000 years ago in poetry, what they're asking, when they say, I want real companionship, I want a soulmate. I'd like to find my other half, as the Greeks would have had it. Now, missing part, well, what they're asking is, I want validation for my existence. Not just to get laid, not just to get fed, for a real lover. Not just a one-night grovel, as the Greeks used to call it. One-night stand didn't make any sense, as far as I can tell, in the Greek language back then. They are asking for validation, that would be a real love affair. If it's somebody that I not only had a lustful attraction to, but that they would validate my existence, what I say I think, what I say I feel, what I say I want to do. Now, besides this individual level, I'm trying to get you people to become more cosmic, of course, in your thinking. Cosmic being not necessarily up there, but just around the what? Corner. But that's where the cosmic reality lies. Just around the corners of this, as always, if you take my initial sketches and try to keep yourself from believing that this is some sort of psychological defect in man. It's not. So if it's not a psychological defect, this is where the city has always found it impossible intellectually to go around any corner. Because they have always, everybody, almost everybody, that's even literate, that's verbal, can give some sort of negative commentary on the nature of man. Ministers, priests, rabbis, your aunt, your mother, you, a continual flow of criticism. But then, if somebody stood up 5,000 years ago, if life had run somebody in that had some large forum, or 50 years ago, or today, and the person says, look, I understand why you people are saying such and such spells potential bad news. I understand why you're pointing out that humans are far too hostile. I understand that. I understand why you're saying that humans in general seem to have too cavalier a manner toward the environment. I understand that, but listen to me, you're wrong. You think people are too hostile, too dumb, too greedy, too unthinking, too uncaring, but that's not it. Something else is going on. Now, throughout history, every now and then it's popped up that kind of information almost seeps out, and you'll get a group of people, historically it seems at least, and trust me, it would happen, it's possible. You can get a group of people that's as though their ear will get right up to the corner, right up to where you go around the corner, and they go, that's interesting. Whether they would say those words or not, they go, hey, because they almost hear that, in general, of course, what I'm saying is things are not as they appear. And there is, within the genetic makeup of man, the knowledge that things are not as they appear to you guys upstairs. They're not exactly that way. So people's intellect can almost get right up to the corner, and you say, what seems to be the individual foibles. Let's just take your criticism of man, that man is not perfect. And the city says right, or this group, my audience says right. That man's a long way from being perfect or being what we believe he could be, right? And they go, yeah, that's all right. But it's not a matter of individual flaws. And then you can get groups of people throughout history that their intellect will go, and they get right up to a corner. The basis of this being that their own molecular makeup up here almost can get to the verbalized point of, yeah, things are not as they appear. I don't know how I know that, but I know it now that you mention it. And all of this that seems to be the individual flaws in man, for you to say that that's not really it, that something greater is going on, I can almost hear that, I can almost hear it, I can almost taste it, and they can't get around the corner. They can never go any further with large groups of people. The going any further, of course, is this. That what seems to be individual activities, what seems to be personal flaws or personal greatness, which is not generally foremost upon the minds of city people. But all of that are simply side effects of a greater task that humans are serving for life. Now, even though we cannot drag words around the corner, I keep trying, of course, on these nights to drag some of you right up to the corner, and then I change the subject or make a joke or cough or bend over or just leave it for a second. And some of you, it's almost as though you're playing one of these old games of snap the whip of me dragging all of you people, and I suddenly stop, and sometimes some of you almost, you get right to the corner and you go, ooh. All right, in this case, verbally, it won't cover it. And those of you who know anything know that this is not a cop-out. I simply state the truth for those that forget it and those who might be seeing these tapes for the first few times. I can verbally take it up to a point, and it's not going any further. If it would, I'd just tell you whatever it is. But in the case of individuals apparently seeking validation for their own lives, which I repeat again, if you hear it, if you look for it, that covers almost all human verbal intercourse. That the parties are seeking validation for their lives. It may appear to be on a very specific area, or it may just be in general. rather than that being some flaw, as far as the words will take it, as far as I can sketch it among ways that are possible that I can see that might be valid or valuable to you, is this way, is inside of life itself. It is using man to continually feed back on itself and for reassurance, for real information, or else it would not be going on, of information that down here at this level, down here doesn't mean anything, out here at this level, over here at this level, where humans are in the life of life, this validation seeking between individuals is a continual reassurance, information going back, energy being converted again, not just for our benefit, not just so that you'll feel better, that somebody says, yeah, you're doing all right. It is a cumulative effect of information going back to life's own consciousness that all is well. That's it. Of course, that's not it. But that's it. I have verbally taken you to at least one corner of where this leads to. So it is not that you are in some way ego deprived. It is not that individuals back in the city are softies and all of them are cotton brains, or that they have to go around all the time saying, how am I doing, how am I doing, am I okay? It's not that. It's not an attack, but it's going on. You need to see that. You need to see that your own nervous system seeks it. People seek it with strangers. It's not just your friends. You're seeking it when you're sitting there at the car that stalled in traffic. And you turn around and somebody, for God knows what reason, somebody over here seems to attract you, seeing another car, and you got mirrored windows, and so you suddenly let down the windows just a little because you know that they can't see you good. And you can see them, but they can't see you, so you let down the window a little bit. Then you do whatever it is that you're driven to do. That, and don't worry about terms of flirting and whatnot, you are seeking from a non-blood kin, from a stranger, non-verbally. You are seeking validation for your life. But it is not a flaw. It does not show that you're sex-starved. It does not show that you are unsociable, that you have to sit at a distance in another car and try and strike some sort of Madison Avenue pose. On a larger scale, humans are continually sending back information to life itself that all is well. Because every time that you've seen, that you're telling other people, that your daughter, your son, your wife, your mother says, oh, I guess I'm just an old fool, I guess I'm just a silly for thinking this. No, you're not. No, it's fine. Again, see, this breaks down because if we were ordinary people in the city, some psychologists say, wait a minute, we've got to stop the discussion here because some people do this as a matter of civilized behavior, that people will tell their loved ones, their family, oh, you're not ridiculous, when they don't mean it. And so you can stay there forever and churn up information, churn up more energy, because that's irrelevant. Of course, you got to be good to start seeing this. It's irrelevant to say, well, this person, I know the example you just said, and I've been exposed to this, and I studied this statistically in my undergraduate days, that many people will turn to their loved ones when somebody will say, oh, I guess I really screwed up by letting that con man take me for all this aluminum siding. No, it could happen to anybody. Now, I know for a fact if I took this young man off to the side and I said, do you really mean it when you told your mother not to worry about that she spent $40,000 on aluminum siding? That this guy would say, he would say, no, she's always been that way. I don't know. I love her. But God, is she can she be a El Stupido sometime? Now they'd say that, and so then they'd say, well, in other words, that person did not help validate his mother's life. It is spurious to say that. Of course, that's why psychologists, if I'm going to say this, don't know shit. Of course, that's why people in the city don't know shit, because everything seems to mean something. It's just that you can't figure out what it means. All of that is invalid once you move into a more complex reality. Literally it is. Because the validation is there. The mother, the person says, well, I guess I really screwed up, didn't I? And another person. Of course, some of you should be getting good enough. These words are really meaningless. I might as well be doing, if we could do it on the right level, I could start doing a form of, I guess, metaphysical Ella Fitzgerald and start scat singing all this, just nonsense syllables. Because you take the words And that's not it, but here it goes. The mother says, the one party says, well, I guess I really blew it. I guess I'm too dumb, I'm getting senile. And the other party, the son, says, no, everything's fine. Do you realize there's the validation? It has nothing to do in a more complex reality. The real reality, greater than this, has nothing to do. I can't go strong enough. I can curse and do all that thing and say it don't mean shit, but some of you got to be able to see this. Any question that, well, all right, party X, the son, did not really mean that. That's meaningless. Meaningless. Doesn't begin to cover it. Of course, that's not true. If you took meaningless, just look in the dictionary, and you could do that. Binary thought can't do that, though. But if you could do that, meaningless is it. It does cover it. It doesn't mean anything. It has no bearing on the fact that validation, which is a kind of energy conversion, took place. It's got nothing to do. It's meaningless to say, well, he didn't mean that. That's meaningless. The validation is there. Or for people, ordinary people, to think, I've got to become more serious. I'm going to become some kind of spiritual person, and I'm not going to lie to people. People ask me to validate their lives. I hear what you're saying. I won't do it. I'll tell them what I feel. It may not make any difference. It may be validation. You don't have to support somebody. Somebody can say, well, I guess I've been stupid. You say, yeah, you've always been stupid. I've always thought you were stupid, and I didn't have the nerve to tell you. The validation is then they realize how stupid you are, and they feel much better. Well, it does not have to be verbally, apparently, positive or supportive in words. It can apparently be negative. Somebody say, you know what? I think you're an idiot. And many times, that can be validation of, well, for you to call me an idiot, any of you who would like to drop your present occupation and take up something, I could point out there is a Nobel Prize awaiting somebody. I don't know whether our lifetime, I can't guarantee, but it might be worth a shot at any of you that like that idea. Because I can assure you, I can tell you positively, at the molecular level, there is the same kind of communication going on in humans. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that you could make the city see it in your lifetime, but that kind of communication is going on at the molecular level inside of humans now. The cellular level, there is communication going on that is of the same nature as humans verbally telling one another, it's all right. That is a validating, of passing along information that all is well. This happens at the cellular level with humans. I can guarantee you this, it's not going to be too long after some of us are gone that they're going to start stumbling across that, because it is a fact. It has to do with them now. It has to do with what appears to be on the 3D level of being health. Some people healthier than others. What appears to be in one form psychosomatic illnesses. But at the cellular level, inside of each of you individually, each side of everybody everywhere, there is a communication going on. There is a conversion of energy at that level, but there is specific communication from cell to cell, reassuring each cell to the other, and then reassuring the organism that is you that all's well. Nobel Prize in chemistry and biology, several $100,000, I think, in case you're interested. Because some of you might teach you a lesson if you get there and figure out how you might begin to actually prove this demonstratively, that could be repeated, and go show it to the committee or somebody and realize that the leading minds on this planet in the fields of biology or chemistry, or whichever ones you tried, would look at it and go, no. You say, just try it. No, we don't want to try it. Make them try it, trick them to try it, and say, see, I told you, and they go, oh, no. So some of you might learn a lesson. It might be rather expensive in your time that it take you to get to that point. But still, I could promise there is a Nobel Prize waiting somebody sometime soon. Might I inject in this paragraph that from a certain view, a real revolutionist does not require validation. Now we're back to the corner, we're back to the bend in words, that this is almost impossible, because then I could take what I just said and say that another definition or another description of what this kind of activity is, or me saying a would-be revolutionist, is that you're attempting to be as free from all influences as possible, which ain't possible. And yet that's what you're trying to do. I don't have to repeat that, do I? It is not possible to be free from ordinary influences. I've never even said it's possible to be free from any influence. All influence. That influence. But the revolutionist does not need validation. And if you want to be real sticky, then I'll say, all right, does not need ordinary validation. In fact, contraire. Any of you who can back up in your memory train, many things I've attempted to sketch out about uncontrolled talk, and one I've never spoken of yet is uncontrollable listening. Most of you, I fear, to even consider if I'm going to live long enough to see you get much past the first one to ever get into the second one. But there is a way in which that to do this, to correctly be doing this with as much vigor as possible, is you should not only not be seeking validation, you should be doing all you can to escape it. And you can escape it. If you got any kind of intelligence, if you're just run-of-the-mill dumb, of course you can't, but I'll go ahead and try to explain a little bit. Anybody with anything resembling the potential for this new intelligence, you can tell. Because if you ever start getting past the corner, even at the corner, what seems to be the horizontal flow of time, as some of you know, becomes open to some subject, to further discussion. The point of that being, you can tell. You can be a mind reader many times. You know that somebody is about to compliment you. I mean, that takes a real genius to know that at times. If we had psychologists here, on the other side, they could jump in and say, well, sometimes you can tell and sometimes you can't. And of course, as always, they're right. Right up to there. But you can tell, and you should avoid it. It's not right or wrong. You're not being humble. You're not even being ersatz humble. But that's where the idea of humility came from, I would suggest to you, who want a little room to play around. That whole idea that if a man was truly spiritual, or if a man was more in touch with the gods or the cosmic forces, he would not be going around blowing his own horn, especially if it was bagpipes. But he would not be promoting himself. He would not even allow others to do so. Of course, you know how far that got. If life understood that, you would not know the name of the rabbi of that temple. You would not be able to go to a Baptist church without even going inside and know who the minister was. No attack on them, but you must see that the need for validation, even in the areas that people in the city believe should be, or even are, somewhere out of the mainstream, above the gutter, among the ordinary level, and it's not true. Everybody needs validation. The Pope needs validation. Let's get him again. There's the great public figure. Well, maybe I've weaned enough of you. All right, the Pope or the President of the United States, the chairman of the Politburo in Russia, whoever, the great guys on the planet now, all the way from political bigwigs to spiritual big shots. You think they don't need validation? If they didn't, they wouldn't have a damn name. Or they wouldn't tell anybody. They wouldn't have a title. They wouldn't dress up funny. They wouldn't wear $500 suits. They wouldn't wear those $5,000 things with little, feathers and dresses and little gold shoes. And people wouldn't bow. People wouldn't scrape. It's validation. But it is not for the purpose of humans feeling good. It's not for the purpose of propping up the Pope or some puppet regime somewhere. It's not to make a Charles de Gaulle think, is my nose actually as big as Algeria, or do I just look this way? Post-Franco jokes just don't go over the way they used to. Post-World War II Franco jokes. I guess not enough of you are post-WW2, are you? The validation is not for the purpose of making an individual here or there, whether he be famous, infamous, or unknown. Can't you see what's going on? And this has been denounced, questioned. It's considered paradoxical, even in the city. Philosophers, theologians, religious thinkers, I always like that, of how, but they've always questioned, how can it be that we hear from all the world's religions, even philosophers, humanistic philosophers, 6,000 years ago, were trying to point out that, I'm not going to try to quote anybody right now, but the Greeks, maxims from that era, there were plenty of them that would say things like an intelligent man or a wise man does not seek the public forum. A man of wisdom is not known outside his neighborhood. That sort of thing. That it is not compatible, something in them moved them to say, that it's not compatible for a man to seek wisdom and to seek fame. The energy conversion behind those words strikes many people. They're not interested in philosophy, not interested in much of anything, but throughout history it struck many people, that kind of energy, they'd feel like agreeing that yes. They don't know why. If you ask them, what the hell does that mean? They don't know. But they feel like, yeah, that's true. That something's fishy. For a man to say, I'm very intelligent, and then they got this throw roses, everybody bowed down. There has to be a big production made. There has to be some sort of widespread validation of his life, of him, of what he says. It distracts people. If somebody points it out that, something's fishy here. Yeah. Many people go, yeah. Doesn't go any further. Turn the tape. Insofar as the real revolution is not requiring validation, it's not possible to escape it all. I'm not telling you people to spend the rest of your life or to really upset the normal flow by trying to look around and to spot that somebody walking down the street might look at me and nod or say, I like that new suit. But the kind of reasonably intelligent approach you should see is to realize that this is going on all the time, and that kind of validation does not feed this. Never. There is no way that any ordinary person can validate you and what you do in any manner whatsoever that has to do with this specifically. Times past, I know I've drawn some curious looks from some of you people, and I point out the real revolutionist doesn't have any heroes. You don't have any peers. That's not the right word. You're not better than other people, but for somebody else not involved with this, I don't care if it was the Pope, I don't care if it is the President, I don't care if they could dig up de Gaulle, and they meet you for a few minutes, or listen to something, or read something you wrote, and go, my God, you're the greatest man I ever met. If you're a real revolutionist, this is not an attack on humanity or anybody, but if you're a revolutionist, you would see who they were, and it's a dog barking. It's got... It might be, relatively speaking, at that time it might be more pleasant than having root canal work. But insofar as somebody in the city, some other human, a person saying, I heard something you said, I read something you wrote, and I want to tell you, I am so astounded. You have got to be the most insightful man alive on this planet today. If that means anything to you, do I have to get crude again? If another human in the city complimenting your intelligence means anything to you, you got shit for intelligence. You're not intelligent. And it's not an act. It's a matter of understanding. It's a matter of comprehension. If you can be validated by some other human, you are some other human. If your life can be confirmed by an ordinary person, you're an ordinary person. It's mathematical. It's a fact. Beyond that, internally, a real revolutionist needs no validation. Do you follow? Your own approval, what seems to be this other you in there? Well, you're getting on the right track now. Proud of you, losing weight, cutting down the sugar, not smoking as much. You told them, you got them that time. If that has any meaning to you, you're no better off than that thing talking to you. That is, you have gone nowhere. You're no better off than you were before I met you. How can you validate yourself? If you could validate yourself, you could have done better. If the thing validating you knew anything, had any power, had any intelligence, you would have needed this. Nobody's self can validate themselves. If they could, even if you weren't involved with this, you'd be happy. Nobody'd need psychiatry. All liquor stores would close, which gives me the willies to think about, but there'd be no liquor stores, there'd be no cocaine or drug problem, there'd be no religious problem, there'd be no nothing. Peace, tranquility, quietness would go all over this planet. And Jehovah would come back and he'd say, I thought I took care of all this after the first day. It'd be like everything had run backwards again. There is nothing in a person ordinarily that can validate you. And yet that seems to be the nature of what runs people. How am I doing? But it's not Ed Koch asking the voters of New York, it's you asking you. How am I doing? How am I doing? What in you can tell you how you're doing? If anything in you can congratulate you, can confirm you, can give you approval, and it's meaningful to you, Jesus. That's almost as frightening as no more liquor stores. Next paragraph. Looking upon this, continuing my picturizations of revolution, looking upon this kind of activity, and what change it might take, how it might take place in you as some sort of change, and it then becoming a kind of revolutionary government as opposed to what you were initially. There are two things I want to, we got the time to point out tonight. One of them is unique and the other one is singular. But I would submit to you are very interesting aspects. One is this kind of government. That is, if it was a new kind of intelligence in you, that you are not exactly the same person you were. You may only be Hogita, a CH. Only that much different, but you are not the same person anymore. And it is not through city forces applied. And it is not pushing the ordinary limits of your elasticity. It is something else. So let us call it, to carry my parabolic ramblings apace, that a revolutionary government, a new government, not what you were, but a new government has taken control. The unique aspect of this is it's not possible under any other conditions in the known 3D city world universe, is that this government can take control and not destroy the previous government. No other conditions is this possible. Not apparently out there, and definitely not apparently in here. Or else, after, for instance, after all AA meetings, they'd have open bar. I'm telling you, that is a splendid example, even if you don't get it. Out there, even if we were talking about literally, which will hold true, literally, a revolutionary government. You surely understand this. There is no such thing, forget the political persuasions or what the partisans were called, any time during history, right up until contemporary times. A revolutionary band cannot take over an established government without destroying the old government. Do you need several seconds to think about that? It's not possible. In the 3D world, it's not possible. Don't hurt your heads any further. It's simply not possible. The band of revolutionaries cannot come in some way and say, look, we got the upper hand, we can wipe you guys out, we can take over the palace today, blah, 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 blah. So, give it up. You see you're outnumbered. You see we got the upper hand. Give it up and we'll let you continue to function. You can kind of be government on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'll be on... It is not possible. That is not the way that the life structure at our level is arranged in life's body. It is only in here, it is only in this kind of revolutionary government can a rebel band take control and not destroy the previous government. This is true in what appears to be the relationship between an individual and the other individuals. That is, you changing does not require that everyone that you know must in some way change and accommodate you. Which, at first blush, if you look back, how about a so-called recovered alcoholic? What does he require, or she require in the city? Somebody that apparently has changed. In other words, apparently they had to change the government, right? The guy used to be a falling down drunk, just a bum. And now look, he's got himself back together, sort of. But he requires that other governments give way. He requires not only that his apparent change in government, change of life, be validated, but to correctly validate it. His wife now must stop drinking. Every time he mentions to people, which he will do continually, about, somebody says, do you know what time it is? On a street corner, you say, yeah, it's 3:45. Did you know I'm a recovered alcoholic? I haven't drank now in 6 months. And his wife will say, I can verify that. I can validate that. Tell him, honey. And his little children say, Daddy, quit drinking. We love him so much. To varying degrees, the immediate vicinity, his localized area where this apparent change, and I'm just thinking it's an illusionary change. All it is an elastic distortion from new forces. But this change requires a kind of destruction of local governments, surrounding governments. Other people, to validate this apparent change, they must give way. Your neighboring governments, if you indeed underwent. Is this getting too tense? Right quick, think back in other places. You got a bunch of little governments. Down in Central America. Some area you got, and there is a revolution. There is a coup, and a new government comes in. They're all bunched around here together. Let's say 5 or 6 little countries. You understand? It is not that one country. Not when you've got the whole little... these little countries, and here a revolution takes place. That is not the end of it. In this one area, it's like the family of that country must validate it. And we're not talking about whether they agree with it, because it could have been this country here, this little municipality, it could have been this guy, the president here, could have been his brother-in-law that was the deposed president over here. So it's not about them saying hooray. But the point is, they have got to validate it to live with it. It's just simply the way things are. The destruction of one government is going to, and a replacement by a revolutionary government, in some way is going to destroy. If that word's too strong for you, to give you some breathing room, it is going to stretch to the elastic limit the validation procedures of the immediate vicinity. Now that's a fact out in life. It is a fact in here. Under ordinary conditions, you try to change, and that's one of the reasons, not the reason, but that's one of the reasons change seems so what? Difficult. Because you're trying to change one thing. The person says, I want to lose weight. But it affects all kinds of stuff. What time you get up, how much exercise you're getting, whether your family's going to keep eating triple sugared tutti fruities for breakfast. And you sit there looking at it, and your wife has 4 chocolate donuts. And you're sucking on a toothpick or a match, and that's your breakfast. Even at that level with ordinary people, that there is an attempted change, even an apparent change, that is, a new government's taking over, you have to destroy, you have to directly affect immediate surrounding governments. It amounts to, if you get good enough to see it, is a kind of destruction of other governments for you to actually execute a revolution. That's the first, that's the unique part. It's, well, wait a minute. Let me say a little more before I get to the singular part. This is the only area in life that a person can, whatever this is, that a person can undergo some genetic shift in their lifetime. Real change. It is the only instance, and they've had a new form of government, it's the only instance where someone can say this. The only time that they can say, for dramatic effect, let me say, think about that for a second. I'm right, and so's everyone else. Now, you could not have a cleaner cut piece of verbal reality than that. That's almost as good as the world's big enough for everybody. But that is a clear-cut piece of goods right off one of the great bolts, not of lightning, but some of the backup material, some of the lining for the fabric of reality. But do you understand that in the city that's not possible? Forget some kind of spiritual thing that, well, if a man was really close to the gods, or if a man was in some way awakened to his great cosmic nature and could actually talk to our dead forefathers and mothers who sank in that terrible time in Atlantis, then somebody here and there will say, life will make them say, then they might be able to do that. Could never do it. That's why they dream about it. That's why they dream that there's been some kind of superhumans or half or demigods here on the planet that apparently could do it. And all these stories arise. That is impossible at the ordinary level. But that is what this amounts to. It's not a play on words. It's not pseudo-spiritualism of some kind or religious dreams. But you do know by now, in yourself, at least along with some of my sketches, that this is impossible. Ordinary intelligence and you or anybody else cannot say. It cannot say it. It might as well fall into absolute scat singing in Albanian. This should be meaningless. That human intelligence, one nervous system at the 3D level, where life is now produced and left everybody. No nervous system, no brain, no intelligence can say, I'm right and so's everybody else. That is a kind of getting to the corner of a 3D wrap-up of this internal validation going on. That other people cannot see it. They are seeking apparently their own personal validation of, am I all right, am I okay? And then the other people, whoever's playing the game with them, your family, your friends, your loved ones, yeah. How about me? You're doing fine? Oh, over there, did you hear what we were talking about? And the guy says, yeah, and I think you both are doing fine. You say, well, you too. It is a continual, and of course it's not always. When I said validation, sometimes life needs reports that things are not well over here. And of course life knows how to handle that. But it seems as though you are looking for, on the individual level, you're looking for a kind of positive validation. I am all right. You think I'll live through this? You think maybe I will get ahead? I will be able to afford a new car? You think I will? Blah, blah, blah. No, yeah. If you could take all of this individual seeking of validation, that is, this individual apparent conversion of energy from one person to another through this verbalized seeking of validation, and you could get right around the corner, or at least get to the corner, you would then see that this is kind of a summary of the 3D world. It is the 3D world being able to tell life that, all right, down here in general, all is well. All's not well all the time, but all is well. Any more than one person can say, I'm right, whatever that is. They can't say I'm right all the time, but they can say, I'm right, and so's everybody else. That wraps it up. That's it, but that is not possible for anyone with ordinary intelligence, no matter how many degrees they got, no matter how straight their nose is, no matter how verbal they are. They cannot do that. Ordinary intelligence cannot conceive of that. There's the other aspect I was going to mention, the singularity as opposed to the uniqueness of this kind of revolutionary government. I was doing, see, this little tongue thing, like I'm thinking whether to, I don't know whether anybody appreciates all this shit sometimes. I took all these drama lessons and read all these books on public speaking. So it's like I'm deciding, should I actually get into this or not? Okay, all right. I've already gone to all that damn trouble. That was a whole chapter in that book. It was $14.95. About dramatic pauses and... All right, here it is. The singularity I was going to point out. These kind of governments, I suggest to you, those of you coming by on horseback, when I say I suggest, it's not like I'm guessing and pondering. See, I say that to try and leave a little room. Leave a little room rather than me hurl absolute dogmatic statements continually. But I suggest to you this, that a revolutionist government, this kind, that I pointed out that one unique aspect, now here's the singular aspect. Such governments, revolutionary governments, not only do not have to destroy the prior government, but the new government, the revolutionary government, is ruled by a kind of silent autocrat. An absolute ruler, subject to no restrictions, I think is an adequate definition of an autocrat. Absolute, answerable to no one. But notice, I said a kind of silent autocrat. And here, singularity, I can say this, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to hear it, but it doesn't happen in life. It couldn't happen. This kind of silent autocrat, this absolute ruler, can do this. He can simply look, and those at whom he's looking understand what it is he wants. And all you got to do is look. They dig it. Not limited to what they could even get up on the screen in Hollywood, that somebody rushes into the king, some phony baloney Hollywood king, and say, Prince so-and-so is fooling around with your wife, and we think we saw him sending out some messages in the middle of the night over to the opposing army. They're trying to get across the channel. What should we do? And the king goes, and they go, oh. This kind of silent autocrat does not require that he be questioned. And it is not limited to these kind of almost cartoonish situations that I just made up. And I'm telling you that this kind of silent autocrat can turn to those that have got to be handling some of the affairs and just turn and look, and they understand. They know what's to be done. They know just what it is he wants. You don't find that singular? I guess some of you might say in your nervous system, well, it sounds kind of singular. I'm sure as I don't see the point. Oh. In that case, I'm not going to tell you. Instead, let me point this out. A revolutionist family would unconditionally follow his lead. A revolutionist family would never in any manner question the old man's decisions. Oh, well, wait, all right. Maybe I should add this. A revolutionist real family, I guess I should put it that way. I thought that would clear it up a lot. All right, concluding paragraph. We'll leave on something about LITE philosophy, or whatever this is. A lighter note. Of course, I don't know how you can get lighter than the opening tonight. Repeating again, my use of the word dumb does not really mean, in the pejorative sense, what you would normally think of. It's not an attack on people, but it is the lack, the inability of people to be as intelligent as some people can be. Y'all remember that? The dumber the people, the more they need a guide. This is not necessarily as obvious as some of you might think immediately. Any of you that even city-wise might have been wired up to look down your nose at religions, some religions, all religions, religions foreign to your religion. I'm telling you, the dumber the people, I didn't say where, I didn't say when, the dumber the people, the more they need a guide. But for those of you that are really caught up in it, the dumber the people, the more they need God. I'll leave out the A, I hate to. The more they need God. This is not obvious. It is not relative. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything in the world to do with intelligence. There are examples everywhere. They're good contemporaneous examples. They are so good, they are so blatant, that it might dazzle some of you and you miss the whole point. So that'd be a nice way to end up on a light note, wouldn't it? For you to get absolutely confused and go off in the wrong direction. It goes like this. I say it's a contemporaneous example. I was thinking They're on TV constantly, so that you don't have to go out and see them in person and get sawdust in your flippos. But they were doing it back. Confucius, Buddha, Jesus, if you consider them of the same quality as Jimmy Swaggart, or these kind of people apparently working for the gods, mouthpieces for the gods, prophets for the gods, across the board. I'm not singling out any of them, except it's going on right now. There's one of those TV ministers that I guess jogged my memory into bringing this up recently. But they have all done it, and it's this. They say to a group of people, they announce to the world in general, anybody will listen, that the gods, or a god, has sent them a message, sent them there to bring you people a message. But God, or the gods, told me this. They said, don't worry about fooling around with the bankers, the other so-called religious people, the big shots, the merchants. They told me to carry the message, God told me to carry the message to the poor, which is synonymous with the dumb. Don't just laugh, it's a fact. They normally use the poor. I don't know of any way that life has ever sent out some prophet to say, and made the guy say, well, God sent me to bring a message to the dumb. And the people sit there, because people will take poor, because 96% of the world's population is poor. I'm just telling you that's a synonym for dumb, is what they meant. The dumber they are, the more they need God. And so you have had everybody from a Confucius to a Jesus, to a Jimmy Swaggart, to a Father so-and-so somewhere, down in Central America, some Catholic priest. It doesn't, it crosses all apparent ecclesiastical lines. It doesn't matter who it is. There is this message. Even the Pope will say it. There he is, worth billions, or that church, and he'll be saying, our message from the blessed Savior is to the poor. We know it's not to the rich, the famous, the powerful. The message is to the poor. All right, you all know that. Here it is. Here is what choice do they have? They don't know it. They don't hear themselves, because they're part of the poor. They are part of the dumb. Now remember, I point out to you, this is not really a comment at all on religion. It's a comment on the nature of how life is structured, but it's structured in such a way that this kind of validation apparently going on between the speaker, and of course him simply being a mouthpiece for our God, but the kind of validation going on between him and what he says the message is to the audience. And what he says to the audience is, my message is to you people, not to you know who, not to the bankers, not to the rich, not for the generals, not for the politicians. And here it is, all the, quote, poor, which I'm telling you is the dumber. All of them going, yes, you're right. And it sounds right. It sounds right to the guy saying it, that believes, says he believes, that the gods have sent him here with this message. But the gods told me, don't go over there and take this message to the bankers. When I do, you got to listen quick. This is not any form of sarcasm. What choice have they got? Does a Jesus, does a Jimmy Swaggart really think that he's going to take that kind of fucking message and go up to bankers, Rockefellers, the leaders of the world, the prime ministers, those who have taken power, and bring them this message, and they're going to sit there and listen and go, I never thought of that. Calling my prime ministers, I'm abdicating, I'm giving it all away, I don't want more power, take away all these trappings, I'm giving all my money away. Thank you, Lord, I'm glad I heard this message. And of course the answer is no, which is a gross understatement. All right, the answer is hell no. No chance whatsoever. But notice the kind of validation, and it sounds right to the poor, which is almost everybody on this planet, for this message to come out from an apparent other human, or a semi-human, says that the God sent me this message of some kind of salvation, it always is, some way to do better, to please the gods. But they also point out, look around you, we're kind of poor, we're just ordinary folks, aren't we? Even though I do see a couple of the Hunt brothers here, but we're just ordinary folk. And they all go, yeah. And they say, well, you know why? We were chosen by the gods, or our God, because he in fact told me Don't take this message to the rich and the powerful. No, take it to my little people, the dumb ones. The dumber they are, the more they're my little people. The dumber they are, the more this message is going to go down. The dumber they are, the more they're going to applaud it. The dumber they are, the more followers you'll get. It is a passing, a validation, of assurance that at this level all is well. It's not the only purpose, but it's one of the purposes that here is the message. Go back and choose anybody you want to. If you can say that Moses had a message, Muhammad had a message, Jesus had a message, Jimmy Swaggart's got a message, whoever it is, listen to the message. Whatever it seems to be, it's always we got to do better. I'm saying you part of the validation is if the message goes over to good to some crowd of people, it's information going back to life. The question being, is everybody still sufficiently dumb down there? And the message comes back. It gets so good when you get to be able to get to the corner and begin to see some of this. As part of, at times, the only reason, assuming I got some choice that I press on with this, is that some of you pop up here and there every, I won't tell you how often, fill in the blank, but enough to keep me going that some of you pop up, a person pops up, and they get to the corner and look around. For some reason, assuming I had a choice, it almost keeps me going. But of being able to see some of this, to be able to see, like the example I was using, remember when I was pulling out another, I used as a springboard the environment versus heredity problem question. And the one I was telling you of now, somebody saying that they have evidence to strongly suggest that such things as shyness can be genetic, and yet then, then the parents have still got some responsibility because they have got to see that they're not that kind of routine family stresses that can exacerbate this kind of problem. So they still got responsibility. And I tried to point out to you that this is a prime example. And you can listen to me, and you can believe that you hear something, but unless you personally can get your intelligence up to the corner to where none of this makes any sense, that is, you reach another level that, aha, that is that what this amounts to is you've got one part of life's body, in this case parents, are now being made to believe that they should or can change their own genetic destiny, that they can do the impossible for the sake of helping another part of life's body, that is their children, who apparently in this case cannot make any change, that they're helpless, they're young, they're tied up to this genetic problem, that is of potential shyness or shyness. And so you've got life making one part of its body attempt to do the impossible to help other parts of its body which personally can't do the impossible. You don't understand the beauty. It is blatant simplicity once you see it. What I was trying to describe to you the night before, or last time we met, you get to a point that makes sense here and you can go up to another level and it becomes no sense, which is an absolute new reality. Because this is blatant simplicity. It is a kind of internal complexity that once you begin to be able to see life in this aspect, in this light, the things that historically have always been thought of as the great questions, the unanswerable questions, the uncertainties, the paradoxes, the kinds of things that make people be sarcastic and critical, those very things are no longer paradoxes. They are blatantly simple. That life can do that within itself. You're just lacking the ability to think in one more dimension. That this is going on when your binary consciousness says no. It can't be. You cannot say that we're all genetically destined. Is that what you're saying? No. Yeah, it is. You can't say that. You can't say that, all right, children. In this case, the example I use from Psychology Today, not the magazine, but that idea about shyness being potentially genetic. The city could say to me, what you're saying is that the children are genetically locked in, the ones in this case, to shyness. That's what you're saying. I heard you say it. And now you're saying that contraire, that their parents, rather than being locked into some genetic straitjacket, can change. They can make the home environment a little more or a little less conducive to the stresses that encourage shyness. And the city would say, that is, ordinary consciousness would say, you cannot have it both fucking ways. It's either one or the other. And what I'm telling you is beautiful. It's not one or the other, and that's why nothing can be understood. Once you begin to see it, it's like this. Within the beautiful confines of life, life can punt and receive simultaneously. Life can deal and sit on its own left. Cards, 2. And it's not possible, is it? Oh, yeah. Don't be dull.